Mbsr is based on a form of meditation originally out of the Buddhist tradition, having to do with this capacity to pay attention and to actually refine our capacity to pay attention.
Mindfulness is like a deeply embodied experience of wakefulness, and we call that, in common parlance, awareness. And we only are alive in one moment, and that's this one, now.
It's also utilizing the latest in neuroscience discoveries about something called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is essentially this idea that the brain can be shaped by our experience. So Mbsr is also, because it's repetitive, because people practice when they're in class. They practice the meditation methods when they're at home. They practice them in their everyday lives, is that there's a kind of mental muscle being built, if you will, that has real life implications in terms of you might actually handle situations in your life differently. The things that used to stress you out might not stress you in the same way.
I started talking to physicians at UMass, asking them questions like, well, of all your patients, what percentage of them would you say you help? And again, remember, this is now 1979. And I was completely astonished by their responses. They said, well, maybe 20%, 15%. And I said, well, what happens to the others? They said, well, some get better on their own, and the rest. But what if you sent your patients to a place where, like, we could take that time and help them to tap into deep inner resources that they have simply by virtue of being human. So I wrote out a 4 or 5 page proposal, and I directed it to the ambulatory care department in the hospital. And I said, I'll do this 2 days a week for virtually no money. I mean, you know, just like pittance. And they said yes to it. We'll try it. And of course, we had to decide, well, what would we call this? Well, in 1979, you weren't going to call it the Mind-Body Clinic. You weren't going to call it alternative medicine. Why don't we just call it stress reduction? Anybody can relate to that. Everybody can relate to that. Let's make the mouth of the funnel as big as possible and bring people into the system. Because most of the people who will be referred to the stress reduction clinic, they are falling through the cracks of the healthcare system.
Despite all the powerful weapons of modern medicine, many patients can't be helped. Frustrated doctors are beginning to turn to an ancient alternative.
Here.
13 years ago, John Kabat-Zinn gave up a promising career in molecular biology to establish this stress reduction clinic right in the middle of the hospital.
Their lives spinning out of control. Jo Driscoll has such a serious heart condition that her doctors say that she could die from a heart attack at any moment with no warning. Irma Jones injured her back at work a couple of years ago. She lives in constant pain. The same thing happened to Dan Kelleher. He'll never be able to work as a carpenter again because he's in a lot of pain and he can't lift or bend anymore. Judy Fine had most of her bowel removed 4 years ago, and she's been living with chronic pain. Jackie Soto recently learned that both she and her little baby are HIV positive. None of these people have any particular experience with meditation, and none of them see how coming here once a week for the next 2 months is likely to help. It's very special for us to be here. This is something that 15 years ago you couldn't find it anywhere, in any hospital, anywhere. You'd have to go to some monastery in Asia in order to find what we're going to be learning. Our first meditation will be an eating meditation. I'm going to pass around some raisins, and the instructions are basically to take them in your hand and look at them as if you'd never seen them before. Basically as if you dropped in from Mars and you just had never seen these things before. People will carry a lot of baggage about what a meditation is, and we want to dispel those notions right away. So we'll say, look, the first meditation exercise that we'll do isn't breathing It isn't sitting in the full lotus posture or standing on your head or some weird thing. We're going to just eat one raisin. And we're going to do it mindfully with awareness. Notice how the body knows where to position it and how to position it. And then start chewing, and don't swallow, just very slowly, chewing.
And as you breathe in, just imagining that the breath is moving right down through the lungs and through the belly, down the left leg all the way to your toes. And as you breathe out, the breath is just moving back up from your toes and ultimately out your nose. All of your muscles in a deep state of relaxation. And the mind simply aware of this flow of.
And you watch the sensations come and go, and very often they will change. Noticing that you can uncouple the sensations from your thoughts about them. And like, this is killing me, it's going to last forever, there's nothing I'll be able to do about it. And you learn to free yourself from those thoughts and realize those are just thoughts. And then it turns out there's inner stillness and peace right within some of the most difficult life situations.
Can you ride on the waves of it? Yes. See if you can stay with the breath and just let the pain do whatever it does. Stay on top of it, but floating on the breath.
Two people this week asked my wife, "Hey, what's with Danny?"
Your friends are starting to ask your wife?
Yeah, well, they didn't say it to me. Well, no, it wasn't my friend. It was my mother-in-law.
Oh.
Boy, he's awful nice and talkative all of a sudden now. And I started laughing. I thought it was pretty good. I didn't notice that. I said, "Oh, there's nothing with me."
Now, there are very few people that I know on the planet that couldn't benefit more from a greater dose of awareness. And almost everything that we do would become more vivid and more alive, and we would probably be a lot happier if we were more in touch with the present moment. And it's
Research at the UMass Medical Center shows that 3/4 of John's patients report moderate to great improvement in their conditions. And 4 years after taking the class, over 90% are still practicing some form of meditation.